and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hello and welcome to Author Roundup. Our special guest for today is Dr. Chérie Carter-Scott. Affectionately known as the mother of coaching, she pioneered the life and executive coaching industry back in 1974. She founded the MMS Worldwide Institute and has, over 5 decades, transformed the lives of thousands by training over 10,000 coaches across the globe. As a New York Times and Amazon #1 best-selling author of If Life is a Game, These Are the Rules, 10 Rules for Being Human, and a celebrated guest on Oprah, Dr. Chérie shares her wisdom of her journey into her memoirs. Through the powerful lens of the 10 rules, she invites readers to explore the rich tapestry of her life, from the hurdles she has overcome to the monumental triumphs that have defined her. So here to talk to us about her book, Life is a Game, Life Lessons Learned, Living the Rules for Being Human, join us as we talk to best-selling author Dr. Chérie Carter-Scott. Hi, Dr. Chérie. Welcome to Author Roundup. How are you?
Hi, Jenny. I'm delighted to be here with you today and your viewers. What a treat.
Yes. So our viewers and our listeners, I know, are very excited to listen in into what we'll be talking about today. So, Dr. Chérie, I understand you just had a book that has been recently published, right? So can you tell us more about your book, please?
Sure. My book is my memoir. It's my life story. And it's about, transitions in human development, but it's my story. And most of the books that I write about, and I have been writing about since 1977, my first book, are about human development and about the transitions that we go through in the human experience. For me, understanding what it meant to be human and to be living this life was kind of an enigma, a bit of a challenge. And so I made myself a journey to be able to understand, what are we doing here? What is the purpose? What can we learn? How do we succeed or win at the game of life? And that's really been my quest for the last 50 years.
That's a little bit connected to the next question that I'll ask, which is what inspired the idea for your book?
About a year ago, my best friend and oldest male friend in the world, Peter, suddenly died of complications with his aorta in his heart. And it was a wake-up call for me. And I turned to my dear husband, Michael, and I said, tomorrow is promised to no one. And we never know when our moment's up. And I thought, maybe it's time to sit down and write my story, my life story, my memoir, and to be able to share that with people.
Yes, and to be able to, use whatever experiences you've had to connect to your audience and at the same time try to make them look into themselves. I think that's a very special thing for you to give to us, your readers or your audience. So you said that your friend passed away a year ago and you started to write back then. So how long did it take for you to complete this book?
It took me about 6 months, mostly because I had to really look at what are defining moments in my life. Mm-hmm. What are the moments where I had a kind of wake-up call to who I am, what I'm here to do. I guess moments when you've kind of been touched by an angel, or when God spoke to me, or when I felt as if I was receptive and open to hearing what the journey was ahead. So I wanted to focus the lens of my life camera on those specific moments that called out to me. And some of them started when I was very, very young. And then they were trackable at different points. And some were like, oh, what about that one? That's a funny story. Well, does it really define me? Is it something that made me who I am today? And those were the questions I kept having to ask myself over and over again, because they were pivotal points. And at each point, I thought to myself, this is important. I need to pay attention. This is a burning bush. This is a message.
Okay, so in that span of time, in that 6 months, can you share any anecdotes while you were writing your book? Anything special that you can share to us, or funny experiences you've had?
Well, and I told you about my friend Peter who passed away.
Mhm.
When he and I were in our teenage years, we both went to boarding school, and they were nearby in Connecticut. And he would write me letters that were about his feelings, about how he was viewing life, about what he was learning, about how he was growing. And these letters were defining for me because I couldn't write back to him what I did and what I ate and what I saw and my schedule. I couldn't, because it would have been so out of sync with the way he was writing to me, almost in poetry. And I thought,
Oh,
I have to dig down inside me and write to him in like kind. And so he actually taught me how to write from my feelings, from my insides, from my deepest truth. And so I learned when I was 16 years old how to write from my inner world. And when I was calling forth this book, it's Peter who came back and visited me and said, these are the important moments. These are the moments that were aligned with the rules for being human, and it helped make you who you are.
well, that's very interesting. So, those letters that you said you received from him, you've kept them all these years. Am
I
I
did.
correct? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. I did.
Has he always been that way? Like, the one who loves to write and all that. I know it could be a little different from how we're doing things now or how folks now are doing it, but letters are very special. Like to me, going out of your way to write something, and I know for a fact that probably when you were a lot younger, it took a lot longer for the letters to arrive to the boarding school, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The funny thing is that whenever I was away from home, my mother would send me postcards and letters, but
Mhm.
hers were always a chronicle of what we did, who we saw, where we went, what we ate. And I thought to myself, this is very different from the way Peter's writing to me. And I can't write him the way my mother writes to me. I have to write him about my reflections, my discoveries, my
Mhm. So,
insight.
so he was very influential to you as a writer. How
Totally.
about as a coach?
Well, I became his coach, actually. And what was interesting is since he was a teenager, he wanted to be a film director in Hollywood.
Mhm.
And this happens with a lot of us in our lives. People said, who do you think you are? You think you're a big shot. You think you're going to be a film director. It's really competitive. You'll never be able to. And he was determined to go to film school and to become a director. And that's what he did become. He became a film director and movies and for television, and pretty famous, actually. But I remember once he sat down with me, he said, I really need a coaching session with you. And I said, what's it about? And he said, which film I'm going to do next, because there are two being offered to me, and I'm not sure which one I should take. And I said, okay, let's look at both of them. So we looked at both the different films, and he chose this one film called In the Region of Ice. And he won the Academy Award for the
Wow.
short film of the year. And it was one of those bonding experiences for us because he taught me how to write and I coached him to get his Academy Award. So it was very special.
Yes. Yeah, I can see. And your friendship spanned like how many decades?
Oh gosh.
Perhaps
At
like
least,
5 decades or six?
probably 6 decades. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That must be something, very few people, that's very rare for people to have and keep a friendship that long. And,
Exactly.
to be with someone who was very special to you and touch you in a very special way and be very influential. So, yeah, that must have been, really special. So, you said that this book is some sort of like a memoir on your part, but who do you think would be the person that would really love this book or benefit from it or appreciate it?
I think there are about three different groups of people.
Mhm.
Number one, any person who's involved in self development or self growth or they really value transformation. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two are people who are looking for ways to be able to find the deeper meaning beyond producing and consuming. People who are looking for, what is my purpose here? What is my calling? What's
Mm-hmm.
important to me? Who am I really? And the people who also are looking at the book to be able to see, how can I grow myself and develop myself from the journey of Dr. Chérie, who's taking me on this journey to be able to see, what does it mean to me? Because reading about my journey is one thing, but then bringing it home to the person who's reading it. And very often they'll be coaches because they really want to be able to have that journey themselves. And since I am a master coach, people say, how did you get here? What did you do? What's
Mm-hmm.
your journey been like? And finally, I put it in print and people can read it and say, okay, now I see. And this is what I need to do to be able to evolve to my highest and best self as well.
Okay. Can you share to us a little bit as to how your readers can benefit, or how can they maximize your book and learn from it? I know there are some parts in the book where you would share personal experiences and then have some questions that would be somehow connected to your experience and connect with the reader. So, can you tell us a little bit as to why you presented it that way and what was your goal in doing that?
Okay, so we have to just go back a bit to the end of the last century. And I was on Oprah, and she was having Change Your Life TV.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, would you walk us through the 10 rules for being human? Mm-hmm. And it was a very specific time because I was coaching the audience members about the rules for being human live air. Now, when you're speaking to 50 million people in a transformational capacity, on television, on Oprah's show, it's a very special moment. And so, we were walking through, and the rules for being human was this book, and she held it up, and it was before it had been published. And she said, we need this book in every home in America. And I thought, ooh, that's a big statement. And it was her saying that from a very clear place. And then we were going through each one of the rules. The first rule for being human is you'll receive a body. Now, we all have one, but maybe we take it for granted. Maybe we just drag it along with us wherever we go. Or maybe we treat our cars better than we treat our bodies. But we all have one. And depending upon how we treat it will depend on how it's there to serve and support us in our later years as well. So we went through every different rule in the book. And it was fun because the people in the audience were ready, willing, and able to embrace these simple universal truths that I had written in 1974. So tracking my life up to now, all of a sudden, it came to me like a light bulb. My life in the context of the rules for being human. Because every different experience that I had that defined me really gave me an illumination of how I lived the rules for being human, or was embracing them, or was struggling with them because of something that had happened that was challenging for me.
Was it difficult? I mean, deciding to share that much in the book, because it's very personal.
It is. It's very personal. It's very intimate. For me, I've lived a blessed life, and I've lived a very difficult life. I've lived a life that had transformations and breakthroughs, and had really deeply difficult, sorrowful, and painful experiences. So it's the whole picture. And so if somebody looked at me and said, well, you've just had a great life, a Sunday child, you never had a challenge. Not exactly true. But if you also look at the other side of it, you've lived a terrible life. Not exactly true. But what I see is that what's really relevant is when somebody looks at their life from the whole picture, to be able to see, what has everything meant to me? How did it teach me about myself and life? How did it help me grow and become who I am today?
So this book is very much related to 10 rules for being human.
Yes.
And it's like the 10 rules for being human applied in your life, and you're sharing it with us now.
That's exactly right. You said it beautifully. And that's one of the reasons why my agent suggested that the book, The 10 Rules for Being Human, If Life is a Game, be on the front of the book. He said, because you are intimately related, and your readers and your followers from the 10 rules, and if life is a game, these are the rules, will say, oh, this is in the same context, only it's personal.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what makes it very special, I believe. And that's what would resonate with your readers and with your audience. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I know, Dr. Cherie, that writing is not really new to you, although you said that it was Peter who influenced you a lot to write this particular book. But I know for a fact that this is not your only book. You have written lots of other books, like how many? Like 19 or?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Translated to different languages, right? But looking
40.
into 40 languages. So looking into this particular book, the one that we're talking about now, what was different about when you wrote it? Like, what's fun? What's the most fun part in writing it?
Well, I think the most fun part for me was actually writing about my discovery about my calling. And I'm a little slow to be able to discover the signs and the clues. Sometimes I'm a little myopic. And so I didn't really know. My mother died when I was 20. My father got remarried within a year, moved to Florida, and sold our family home. And at that point, I was pretty much cast adrift. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, where I was supposed to go. I was still at university, and I was thinking, I don't know what I have to offer. I don't know what I have as a talent. I don't know what I'm supposed to do at all. I mean, I was really pretty much floundering. And then I just spent a lot of time in meditation and prayer and making lists. And I said to God, I really want to know why I'm here. I want to know the purpose of my life. Would you please direct me, guide me, send me a sign? And I started getting signs in the form of messages and people saying things to me. Like one person, and I write the story about how Lloyd said to me, will you help me with my business? And I said, I'm trying to find the purpose of my life. I don't have time to help you with your business. He said, called again. He said, will you help me with my business? I'm really serious. I said, there are people who do this for a living. Why don't you call them? And then the third time he called, he said, I really, really, really want you to help me with my business. And I said, Lloyd, why are you calling me? I've been clear. I've been honest. I've been straightforward. I told you, it's not me. Why are you calling me? And he said, oh, that's pretty simple, Cherie. I trust you. And I said, thank you for trusting me, but I don't know anything. And he said, that is what could be very, very helpful. And I thought, you're going to pay me to know nothing? Really? I said, well, then I accept. So it was fun for me to be able to write the story about how the coaching industry came into existence, because I was this honest, sincere, clueless young woman who knew very well I didn't know much about anything, but I was very curious and I was willing to ask the questions. And that's what helped him get clear on what he needed to do about his business. And he started telling people about this woman, his friend, who asked these incredible questions. And then they started to call me. And I just thought, what do I do with them? And then I said to them, I'll ask you questions and you'll find your answers. We'll do it as a partnership together, but you will discover your own truth. I'm not going to give you advice or suggestions or good ideas, but you will find your truth. And people said, sure, whatever, you got great recommendations. Why wouldn't I? And so that's how it all started. And that was really fun, writing about the different stages and the different steps along the way. And then people saying, can I watch you do one of these sessions? And me asking the client, can somebody watch us? And they said, sure. And then they would take notes about what I was doing, which I didn't know because I was pretty much of an unconscious competent. I was very competent, but I had no idea what I was doing. And so the beginning of the coaching industry literally started 50 years ago, 1974.
Wow. So that's why you are known as the mother of coaching, because you started it all. So if that was the most fun, what would you say would be the most difficult? Your book.
The tests along the way, because whenever you want something, whenever something comes in your path and you say, ooh, I want that, that's important to me, that really touches my values. Whenever something resonates, there are always tests along the way. And the tests are the hardest part because we think, I know what I want and I'm just going to go after it and get it. It's going to be easy. Not so much. Like, for instance, when my father was he was going in for surgery. And I contacted him and I said, look, I want to fly to Florida and I want to see you and spend some time with you. And he said, no, this isn't a good time. And I said, no, I'm serious. I really want to see you. It's been ages. And I'd really like to spend some time with you. He said, wait until after the surgery. Okay. And I thought, okay, good girl that I am. I'll wait till after the surgery. Only my father passed away when he was in the surgery. Oh. So I never got to say goodbye. I never got to, reconnect with him. And that was really, really sad. But then the part that's really tragic was when we went to Florida, my two sisters and I, to be able to meet with his new wife. Mm-hmm. And we sat at lunch and I said the question, will there be a reading of the will? And she turned to me and she said, there's no reason. He left me everything. And he left you girls nothing. I felt like I was in a Disney movie. It was like the wicked stepmother, godmother, or whatever. And I thought to myself, what was his communication to us? And it took me a long time to search my soul and even to consult with a psychic to be able to say, why did he do this? And the outcome, I don't want to spoil the book for the readers, but the outcome was a discovery that he believed in his daughters so much that he believed that we, with the grace of God, could make our lives what we wanted them to be. We didn't need his money, his possessions, or his antiques to be able to make our lives into what they were to become. And reframing it in that way liberated me, gave me freedom, and gave me the capacity to believe that he did love us and that he cared about us and that it was because he believed in us that he knew we could make it without his resources.
Right. And I'm just curious, how long would a realization like that take? Like, how long did it take you to come to that realization? Like you said, it was a process, right? Yeah. It didn't, you just woke up one morning and you said, oh, okay, that's it. But you said you went through a lot.
It took me 2 years to come to that realization about him, because I had always felt close to him. I was the youngest. I was supposed to be named in his honor because I was supposed to be a boy. Didn't turn out that way. And so when he disinherited all of his daughters, it was kind of like a blow. Like, wait a minute. What was the communication to us? Did he not love us? And so reframing it and rediscovering this whole new way to recontextualize it made me free from the onus of, being abandoned, being disinherited, not being cared about by my last living, paternal relative. It's like, what was that about? But having overcome it was so important to me because I got to see it in a different light. I wasn't the victim. I was then victorious.
And then, not to spoil the contents of your book, because you said that's part of that's probably one of the chapters, right? How will you make your readers relate to that experience?
Well, asking them the question, unfulfilled expectations. Were you shocked by something that happened? What did you do about it? How did you come to terms with it? How did you reframe it to be able to have it become something empowering as opposed to something just stressful?
Yeah, so that's something that I really like in the book, because right after a chapter, there would be questions at the end, right? Like, you would be asking us questions as to, difficult questions, but it would make us really look into our lives as well and kind of connect with the experience that you just shared. So That's I think that's a very good exercise for us to understand ourselves too, as we look into your life, as you share what experiences you've had. Yeah.
So people who are into reflection
Mhm.
and believe that, people who keep a journal, people
Mhm.
who like to reflect on their life and why did this happen? What is this here to teach me? What can I learn from this? People who are into living that life can really hugely benefit from the book. And people who are not, if they're willing and if they're open, they can learn a different way of looking at circumstances so that they aren't devastating, but possibly illuminating.
Right. So it's not only for those who are going through tough times or difficult times in their lives, right? Like basically just anyone who would want to look into, look deeper into the lives that they have. Okay.
That's right.
So, do you get a chance to interact with your audience or your readers? Like, do you get to communicate with them or perhaps answer some fan mails?
Yes. As a matter of fact, people write to me and they ask me questions. They like to share their stories. They like to be in connection with me. Whether it's through social media or through directly after reading a book. I have right now, and the book just came out, but right now I think it's 15 5-star reviews on Amazon from people who say
Oh.
the book was, touched me so deeply. I read it 3 times right away. I read this. I mean, they were really, really generous, kind, and loving words from people all over the world.
Can you share with us some, the nicest feedback or some reviews that you would still remember that would really, you know,
I could pull it up on my phone and take a look because they're very, very special. And I every time I read a new one, it's kind of like, oh, that's lovely. That's really beautiful. Um, so here's one that came through just yesterday, last night. Um, I could not wait to read this book immediately. It is a marvel of a story, a beautiful life story, an inspiring story, the story of friends and sisters. It is so special. I am so delighted that you wrote it. This is the first time in my life that I read a book in one sitting. I started and couldn't stop. The book was extremely revealing about the author, yet it was eminently powerful in getting me to explore who I was and what I wanted and how was my own life going. And then there's, this is a beautiful one by Ariel Ford. She says, Chérie opens the kimono and reveals the good, the bad, and the ugly of her life journey to being the godmother of coaching. Unlike many narrative memoirs, Chérie reads like her story diary, giving the highlights of her day or experiences, sometimes leaving the reader wanting more, especially about one husband who was a narcissist and sociopath. I totally enjoyed learning her backstory, and so will her fans and her students. They're just wonderful little nuggets, every one of them.
I'm sure there's going to be more as we, more and more people will be purchasing a copy and, reading it. I'm sure you'll be getting more reviews. So, I know this is not your first time writing and all, and you've written lots of books. What advice would you give to budding authors or writers out there who, are just having doubts or don't know where to start?
I say start. Don't procrastinate. Start. Sit down and start writing. And don't set the bar so high. I actually talk about the story of me writing my very first book called The New Species in 1977. And I sat at the typewriter because we didn't have computers back then. I sat at the typewriter poised to write as if I was going to play a symphony. And all of a sudden, nothing happened. Nothing. My fingers weren't moving. My thoughts weren't moving. Nothing was moving. I was sitting there staring. And I thought to myself, did a little self-coaching. What's going on? I have to write a very significant book. What else? I have to write a powerful book. I have to write a book that's going to change people's lives. I have to write a book that's never been written before. And I started hearing my expectations, and they were way up there. And I thought, gosh, I think I set the bar a little high. Maybe I could bring it down a little bit. Well, okay, if I were to bring the bar down, could I write an inconsequential book that's not going to change anybody's life? I think I could do that. Could I write a book that's going to be boring and really kind of not memorable on any level? Yes, I could do that. So I started writing just blah, blah, blah. And as I was writing, because I gave myself permission to at least get on the page, it started to get better and better and better. And the most important thing was I gave myself permission to not edit while I was writing.
Okay, so just write everything that comes to mind and just let it flow.
Yes. And come back later and edit, but don't edit while writing, because the editing will jam you up in the editing process. And what you want is you want flow to happen. So I say, well, number one, don't procrastinate. Number two, start today. Get some words on paper. It can be a sentence or two or three or a paragraph. It doesn't matter, but you need to get started and not keep saying someday, because you never know when someday is going to happen. It might not. But if you start and you give yourself permission to write without editing, and then you'll come back and edit later. Those are the keys.
So how did you keep the flow or the momentum going?
Yeah. Well, they come to me. It's either somebody says something to me and says, you need to write this, and it resonates, or it doesn't, or I argue with them, or I get the message that I need to write something. So Charlotte Bertrand in Las Vegas came to me and she said, you need to write a book on coaching. And I looked at her and I said, there have been so many books on coaching. Really, I don't think we need another book on coaching. And she said, Chérie, we don't have your book on coaching. I said, that's true. And she said, that is going to be a contribution. You have to write your book on coaching because you're the mother of coaching. I went, maybe you're right. Let me think about that. She said, just go back through the course that you teach, because you teach the most inspiring course on how to become a coach. Why don't you just go back through your PowerPoint slides and your notes, and I bet you it'll come to you. Well, I did what she said. I considered her a messenger. I did what she said, and it did. It started percolating inside of me. And I started writing to the reader. It's like, you're thinking about this. Well, let's consider what it takes. Number one, do you like helping people? Number two, do you like being a catalyst for their discovery as opposed to knowing and telling and advising and suggesting? And number three, do you like making a difference in people's lives? Is that important to you? And if you do, well, maybe you should consider becoming a coach. And so the whole book was about reaching out, taking the reader's hand, and walking them through the steps to becoming a coach and what that's all about. And Charlotte was totally right. It was my book.
And after 50 years, this time, your memoir.
Yeah. This is my newest book. And it is the revelation of what it means to live life as a coach, what that means, where you're reflecting on what happens, not discounting, discrediting, or dismissing, but really looking at it and saying, what does this mean? What does this mean to me? And what can I do about this?
Is there anything else that you would still like to achieve after everything that you've already done? Like any personal goals or professional goals related to your, writing or books and all that, or just coaching in general?
Well, I'm still working as an assessor for ICF and helping people who want to be get official feedback from a master coach about what they can do to improve their coaching and also their level of certification. I'm still doing that, and I'm still teaching, and I love teaching. And we teach online with Zoom, and so people can sign up from all over the world, and depending upon their time zone, of course. I still love that passionately. And I just want to keep helping people. I just received notification a few days ago from a company in Japan that I've been working with since 2014. And they told me that my books translated into Japanese, and the English version have been used to educate 6,000 Japanese students and
Wow.
help them learn English. I didn't know that. I had no idea. And that really made my heart sing, because if I can help anyone achieve any goal in their life, that really makes me feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose.
So we can still expect a lot more from you.
We'll see. But right now, I'm so excited about, we just celebrated 50 years of teaching coaches, and we had a big event in Thailand. And I'm going to have a birthday at the end of May. And people are giving me my birthday present being maybe a review on Amazon, maybe. And I'm going to be recording the Audible version as well, which I'm really excited about, because people sometimes, they like to hold a book, or they like a Kindle, or they like a tangible book, or they like to listen. I love to be able to accommodate people's learning styles, however they want to receive the information. That's what I want to give to them, how they can receive and how they can grow.
So that's something that I'll be looking forward to. So the audiobook. So you will do the narration.
Yeah.
Okay. And any final message you have for our viewers and our listeners?
Well, if you want to be able to write your own memoir someday, and you want a different take on it, a different lens to look through, but something that allows your readers, whether it's family members or generations to come, or people to be able to discover who you are and who you've been and what your life has been about, consider my book, because maybe it will illuminate that spark inside you that says, I can do this too. And that's what I want to do. I want to open that door of possibility so that people can grow and learn and transform and take it to the next level.
And perhaps you can invite them to any promotional activities that you'll be having. Do you have any coming up, or invite them to check out your social media accounts and your website?
Yes, my website is drcherie.com. And my activities, I have a bunch of podcasts coming up, and then there's an event I'm going to in New York, but they're all on the verge of being set up. But I do have a presence on YouTube and on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And anyway, I think I'm present in most places where I'm supposed to show up.
Yes. So
yeah.
I bet all of the information that they need to get in touch with you or to follow you, listen to your podcasts or watch your vlogs, your YouTube, would all be in the website. Am I correct? Like in drcherie.com.
That's right. And they just have to notice, the spelling of my name, because sometimes people say sh, oh, that's an S, but it's really a C. So you pronounced it beautifully, Jenny.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Chérie, for a very inspiring talk. I really learned a lot, and it's really fun and, touching to talk to you about your book, a very personal one at that. So everyone, you can get a copy of Dr. Cherie's book, Life is a Game, Life Lessons Learned, Living the Rules for Being Human, from Archway Publishing online bookstore, as well as Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And it's available in softcover, hardcover, and ebook, and soon an audiobook.
Kindle too. Yes, absolutely.
So thank you to all our viewers and listeners. Until the next episode of Author Roundup. Bye.